Hello everyone, my name is Ricky Rivera and thank you so much for tuning in to our second episode of our Indominant solo roleplay. Today we're going to be continuing the story of Nightwave, our Psionic Arbiter, as she continues to learn about her story, her past, and how is it exactly that she got her powers. So we had last left Nightwave at, she had actually escaped a lab that was containing her. She was in a kind of solitary kind of tube that it looked like they were doing a bunch of kind of tests and whatnot on her, and she woke up and saw the scientist, and she exploded the entire glass case. She's not sure how that happened or where this power came from. Immediately, two scientists were dead on the ground, and one came barging in trying to stop her and had two robot lackeys next to her. She was able to break free from them, bringing them down, and unfortunately unable to really control her psionic abilities. She wanted to keep them alive. She didn't want to deal real harm to them, but unfortunately was what dealt a lot of damage to them and sent a lot of psionic force waves towards them, destroying them. And so with that said, she got out of the lab and she discovered that there was another person in there, another a person that she hasn't heard of before, but she discovered a person named Black Arrow, who appeared to be mostly made of kind of cybernetic parts, robotic parts, and so on. But it looked like he was in a state where he could not, be taken out of there. So that's something that she clocked, that hey, this Black Arrow is here. She found the information about him, who he is, but she's not sure why he's here at that specific lab. Fearing that there would be more retaliation or more people coming after her, she escaped out of there. And with her survival skills, she was able to find a quick kind of cave, a small outlet for her to actually stay in. So that's where we find her in right now. So Nightwave, in this cave, this cavern, she stayed the night, right? She felt, with her survival check, she was able to deduce that she was in a safe spot. It looked like she could stay in there okay and be fine. Outside of the lab, there was no markings for roads, no clear, markings of civilization or anything. We did find that through some of our rolls as well. So with that, she is, hiding in here. She tried to rest up, kind of heal her wounds so she's back to full health. But with that said as well, I think that something happened overnight. I think the voice that was calling out for her inside of the actual kind of test tube that she was in at the lab had called out and reached out to her and had spoken with her. So I think what that looks like is that this voice is reaching out, and what I want to do is I kind of want to set, what is the overall kind of attitude and perhaps, the descriptor of who this voice is. So that way I can kind of see, how do they respond to Nightwave? So far we know that they are helpful, but we don't really know exactly what it is. It's just a voice in her head that is brand new to her, that she's never had before. She still doesn't actually understand exactly why she was in the lab. As I said, she only knows that she had some kind of Thrawn parasite put into her in some kind of way. That was something that we had actually discovered from some of the paperwork and whatnot that was laying about near her as she was trying to escape out of there. So let's do some rolls. What I'm going to do is I've actually made a D100 list of descriptors as well as different roles that when you combine the two together, you can actually figure out, what kind of person or what kind of being are you talking to, right? And so what we want to understand is what is this voice, so that we can better understand how did they talk to Nightwave in her rest, in her sleep. So let's roll some things and let's look up that list. So got our D100s here. We've got a 80, and this is going to be for the descriptor first. So let's look that up. So the first word that we came up with is shifty. So that already sounds kind of interesting, right? Now we're going to see what kind of role that they may have. So a shifty something, right? Let's go ahead and roll again. We've got a 70 now. Perfect. Let's go ahead and look that up. So raider is the second word. So put together, shifty greater. So to me, that kind of sounds like this the Thrawn parasite that was put into her was perhaps something that they they were something that they were put into forcefully. They didn't maybe want to choose Nightwave, and as a result of that, they're kind of trying to preserve themselves while being a host, or while being inside their host, Nightwave. So what we know about that, so far isn't too much about like how this parasite actually works. But we do know at least that that's kind of the perspective that we're going with. So let's see how that actually works out. So with that said, I think we would switch over to what goes on at night. What's the conversation? And so I think that Nightwave would be stirring, right? She would be, trying to bundle up. She only has kind of like lab coats that she stole, obviously, and some very light wardrobe that she was, in the actual lab from. So not really much to go on, but just kind of trying to cover herself up. It's definitely cold out, as we determined before. It was rainy, but with that said, I think that she is kind of stirring, and she has her eyes closed, and she hears this voice that it's sounding more kind of pushy. It's sounding more like they want to take over and maybe like help. And I think this is how it would work, that they want to help Nightwave out, but they have to be kind of they have to be more aggressive than what maybe the Thrawn want to be. And so this parasite is going to try to reach in, and she's going to not like it. She's gonna be like, no, like, get out of my head, right? Like, I don't want this, no. And it's going to be very pushy and aggressive, but I think that she's going to hear this voice, and the voice is going to say to her, it's okay, let me in, let me help you. And not knowing who she can really trust, but knowing that at least that whatever this voice is had helped her escape, I think she would. I think she would let her mind be just momentarily free to allow for this kind of parasite to reach deeper in, right? And to perhaps help her out. And I think with that, again, she's kind of stirring around, and she settles down, and she relaxes, and she just lets her mind be at peace for a moment. And suddenly, she starts kind of seeing some clarity. She starts seeing some energies as her eyes are closed, that she can kind of feel a pulse of psionic energy kind of going outbound, right, in through this small little cave outlet here. And I think what that means for her is that she's expanded her psionic abilities by allowing this Thrawn that has come off aggressively, like, hey, I'm here to help you, let me in, let me out, let me help you. But while as well, it's something new to her, something foreign to her. So with that said, I think what the big thing that's going to come out of this is that I'm going to allow her to level up. So leveling up, how I'm going to play it out in this solo roleplay is if I see that Nightwave has perhaps moved her objectives forward, or she's, ended in a way that she's done some combat and so on, I am going to move towards trying to level her up. And I think if it makes sense in the roleplay like this one does, like, hey, this parasite's like, yeah, it was kind of shifty. It was kind of, aggressive in how it's trying to help you out. It's trying to get into your mind versus working with it. I think that, that makes sense for this, right? So we're going to bring her up to level 2, and that means a couple of fun things. Number one, right off the top, she's going to get some health. So she went from 20 health to 26. So how we handle health is first it's going to be a raw number for an Arbiter plus their durability stat. So with that said, their total durability is 2. That raw number is just 4. So 4 plus 2, 6. We added 6, right? From there as well, we do gain at level 2 in every even level 1 stat point that we can allocate to any stat that we want. Now, as an Arbiter, I'm very much focused for Nightwave in being able to dish out some pain, being able to actually control the field and so on. So to increase her control modifier and to increase also her attack modifier as well, we're going to increase her intellect. So by increasing her intellect, her attack mod and control modifier will increase by 1, bringing both of those numbers to +4 instead of +3 is what it was. So total of 4 intellect. So our stats are durability 2, intellect 4, and power just 1. And power does control damage modifier, so that's how much additional damage she can do on an attack. But there's something else that happens at level 2 that is really, really fun. The supers start earning their talents. So talents look like this. Essentially, as they grow in level, a super can begin selecting a couple of different talents to make them more, I would say unique is one path, but another thing is for them to hone in on their play style, right? What do they want to be on the actual battlefield? How do they actually want to work with perhaps others? In this case, obviously Nightwave is by herself. So for me, I want to take a look at what can we actually add to her talent, or rather do with her talents and selecting them, that could be very beneficial for her to be on her own and make it easier for her to actually use her powers. So what we're going to do here then is we're going to take a look at one that's that essentially is going to change the way that she actually operates some of her powers. So for this, we are going to change the way that she actually operates her powers by selecting Mind Illusion. So with this, all your psionic powers with stat checks are now intellect checks. In addition, you no longer make attacks anymore, and instead, the target of your psionic attacks must succeed an intellect check with a difficulty of 10 plus your control modifier. And remember, we just increased that. Or take the damage and receive the negative effects of the attack. So this is going to make things a lot easier for us, because now for the attacks that we were perhaps worried about actually hitting and whatnot, and focusing just solely on attack modifier, by dumping into intellect, for instance, we can now just focus on increasing the difficulty of whatever the actual attack is, and make it a lot easier to get hits in and so on. So really enjoy that. We're going to see how it works out and see how we like it, and in roleplay as well, who knows, we may even want to swap out a talent, because it's not a permanent choice. It's just something that makes sense, I think, logically at this point. And it also makes sense that now this Thrawn, this parasite's kind of in her mind, talking to her, and she's letting it in and allowing her to really hone in on her powers as well. And then the last real quick change, we do earn 1 tier 1 power. We had 2 already, just starting up a new super, but we earn our 3rd last one. And so with that, I've actually grabbed Interception, and what that allows is just to quickly raising up through telepathy like a boulder or stone or something to actually block some damage from being received, whether it's through melee or through range or anything like that. As long as me or an ally are attacked within my range, I can actually use this reaction. So really like that. Can lower some of the damage as well. So with that said, let's get into the actual roleplay bit of it. So where Nightwave is, again, I think it's now cresting into the morning. This cave, I kind of imagine it as being, again, it's like it's shallow enough that you can go into it and then nobody would see you in it, but it's no more deeper than that, right? It's not a massive kind of cave system or anything like that, and that's where she kind of felt it was a bit safe to stay in there. And then there wasn't, I think with her last survival check that she made last game, she would have known, like, is there an animal in here, right, or anything like that, and it doesn't look that way, right? So I think she would emerge from this cave, and she'd be in the middle of the forest, right? She did venture out pretty far, I would say maybe a couple of miles away from where the actual lab was. She would kind of clock and keep track of where that actual lab was, but again, she still hasn't really seen any sign of civilization or anything like that. So with that said, as she emerges with daylight now out, and perhaps the sun is nice and clear and so on, and so she can see kind of the forest out there and so on, I'm going to go ahead and ask the GM emulator, ask a question if can she see any kind of signs of civilization. This means buildings, this means roads, like anything that would point her in a direction of hey, here's perhaps a city that might be safe, that obviously can give her some food because she doesn't have anything, just some clothes on her back, and that's about it. A couple of quick things that I just caught. Number one is we do need to see if this is actually an altered scene at all. I should have actually rolled that at the beginning. The chaos factor, in my opinion, she did have control at the end of the scene, but I think because she was rushing out, it wasn't fully in her favor. So I'm going to increase the chaos factor up to a 6. So what that means is that if I ask a question, the probability of a yes happening is a little bit more likely to occur. So we do have to be a little bit, careful on some of the questions to make sure we're asking the right questions to generate the right kind of scenario that we like, right, for the story that we're building. So number one, let's go ahead and ask, first of all, with a chaos factor of 6, is this an altered scene? Is everything expected? So a 6 or under, let me see here. Yeah, a 6 or over would mean that it is the expected scene. So on this D10. So, all right, so 1 actually. So that means it's an altered scene. And with it being an altered scene, there's just one more secondary roll that we would do here. So let me take a look at that. So with an altered scene, it is 1 through 10. So we use a D10 again, and there's a couple of results that can occur. So let's do that first. We've got a 4. So with a 4, we have increase in activity. What would that mean? So I think increase in activity, I think what that would do is essentially perhaps the scientists are obviously well aware of her actually escaping, and perhaps there are patrols that are out and about in the forest looking for her. That would definitely makes sense, right? You look in the nearby forests and so on. So I'm going to, at this point, make a survival check to see, did she actually maybe cover her tracks? Did she make sure that, there's no way of them kind of finding her, or perhaps did she slip up? I'm going to say for this difficulty, we'll actually go ahead and get it assigned. I'm going to assign a difficulty of 10 to this survival check. This means that it is a challenging check. This is something that we would have in our comic editor compendium or our game master book to quickly, determine like what would be a difficult roll here. So I'm going to use our D20 now. Let's go ahead and do our first survival check. And again, we're determining, did she cover her tracks? Are they on to her? Do we think that she needs to get moving here in the morning quickly? Again, survival instincts kicking in. And she does have a little bonus to this, so let's check it out. All right, 16, and a little bit of bonus on that. That is a +3, so a 19 total. And with that, we definitely passed the check. So we're going to add 2 experience points on that. It wasn't a critical, so no worries on that. So got a little bit of experience on survival. But with that, I think with a 19, easy enough, she remembered to cover her tracks. Hey, she kind of didn't leave any things unturned or whatnot. So she feels very confident that she can escape out, but she would know, or she would, kind of get that sense that, she needs to keep moving. Right? And I think definitely there would be patrols out there. So that's something new that I think I'll be checking for. Is there anyone out there actually looking out for her? So with that said, let's get her out of the cave and let's get her into the forest and starting to see, does she actually see any kind of sign of civilization? So let's actually roll that. Does she see any signs of civilization? With a chaos factor of 6, we would need a 65 or below to say yes. That is a 40 even. Okay, so yes, she does see some civilization. I think what that could be is perhaps some signings of some maybe some buildings, and maybe a couple of like power arcs or power poles, right? Like, you know, the poles coming from power plants and so on, right? So I think that might be a quick thing to be able to see. Now let's ask again, is this civilization, are these buildings nearby, or is she still several miles away, in which case we'll have to kind of look and see, do we need to get around some patrols, right? So let's go ahead and ask a question. Are these buildings pretty nearby, or are they pretty far away? So 65 or less for a yes, they are nearby. Let's see, that's a 2, and I think 60, yeah, there we go. So 62 barely is a yes, right? So they are nearby enough for her to go ahead and try to actually get next to them. So I think with that said, let me set up a couple things to kind of set the scene a little bit, and we'll kind of go from there. So I think another question that I would want to ask is this town, since it is kind of nearby, we can tell this, does it look like the town is perhaps abandoned, or does it look like, you know, there's people there, right? So let's see if it looks like abandoned, just to get an idea of what we're kind of building out to. And so again, 65 or below, it looks like it's abandoned. And that is a 10 at least. Oh, geez, I think I moved that a little bit. I think it was a 17. We'll look at the video here. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, so looking at the video, so sorry, it was actually a 17 total. Not that it made too much of a difference, but just want to be on the record. So with that said, with a 17, it's an abandoned town or area. So we're gonna set up a couple things to look out here, what I imagine to be a kind of abandoned area. And it may make sense because if, yeah, she does find this place in kind of the middle of nowhere, so perhaps this town was one of, you know, multiple different towns that could be abandoned nearby this lab, right? And perhaps that's why the lab was so well hidden away from others. So let's look at that. All right, and we are back. So luckily I have a lot of abandoned terrain, so good roll. But not so good for Sarah. So I think that she starts to approach this town, since it's not too far away. With her high survival skill check earlier, she was able to kind of make it through the forest, kind of undisturbed, making sure she's not leaving any path behind. But this town doesn't look too inviting, right? So down the middle here you see a bit of kind of a destroyed road here, as well as multiple destroyed buildings, but it looks like maybe to the right there's some kind of like lodging or some kind of hotel or tavern or whatnot, that looks like it's still put together, but in the distance a lot of destroyed buildings, right, that don't look very inviting. But at this point, Nightwave is still just human. She is definitely hungry. She is looking around. I think that what she's going to try to do is sneak around, and perhaps just even thinking about survival instincts here, the building that looks the least destroyed is likely the one that may have some resources in it or something for her. So I'm thinking, you know, she's going to look to the right. She's going to try to sneak into that building there that looks like it could have been a leftover tavern or some kind of bar or something like that. And perhaps there's some leftover food for her to kind of try to grab real quick, and just to help her out. So with that said, first thing I'm going to do is see if she can sneak around and set that level of how she's doing with that. And then if any other questions come up that maybe introduce something, a new element or whatnot, we'll do a couple of new checks on that. But for now, I think from what she can see, it's daylight again, and she's coming out of the forest. I think she can see if there's anything here, so I think it's going to be a pretty low check. I'll just go ahead and say it's 8 for pretty simple, but let's roll our d20 to go ahead and see how she does with sneaking around, how well she does with it, maybe how confident she feels about sneaking around. So let's try this. Okay, so with a 10, and we do have, I believe, a bonus from that, from expertise in sneak. Yes, we do. So we have a +3 to that, so definitely beats the check. It's not a critical, but it does give her 2 experience in sneak skill, which is great. So we could just get better and better on sneak. So she does feel confident about sneaking through. She feels it's pretty simple and whatnot, and I would say she's able to kind of sneak around the back of that building and to try and find kind of a window, an open window or whatnot. So my question would be does just peeking through that window, just quickly checking right before there's anything wrong there, would she get a sense that this has been abandoned for a long time? Or is it perhaps something more recent? So the question would be then, has this been abandoned for a long time, yes or no, right? And I would say a long time, as in, maybe the resources that she'd find in there, it'd be hard for her to find anything useful because it's been, dust has swept in, the plants and forests have eaten up to the actual inn itself as well. So again, still chaos factor of a 6, a 65 or lower to actually succeed here as a yes, that it would be an abandoned playset, which she'd be able to find. So let's go from there. So that is 97. Okay, great. So yeah, that is actually an extreme no, meaning that it's not abandoned at all, and in fact it's probably much more newer, that it's very, very fresh and has not much dust or cobwebs at all there. So that is perfect. So with that said, I think she's going to make a sense check to see how easily she can find some resources or something there. I think that this would be something of a bar. Like a bar / tavern kind of thing. So I think that she'd find typically some bar food or maybe some drinks and things like that. But as well as perhaps, if she maybe can go upstairs and maybe we separate that out. But let's make a sense check to see what she actually finds. So that's going to be a d20 roll, and let's see how she does. I'm going to say it's a simple check. I'm still going to count it as like an 8 on this. So let's see how she does versus an 8. So nat 20 on that. That is fantastic. That's going to do a couple things. So when you're making a skill check and you critically succeed, so 20 on the die, you automatically get +3 experience, as well as humanoids. Oh, I've been forgetting. Humanoids are fast learning, meaning that anytime they make a skill check, fail or succeed, they earn an additional +1. So give me 1 minute. I'm going to write that down, but I'm going to definitely make sure to show that up here, that everybody can see that humanoids are fast learners, quick to adapt, that kind of thing. Okay, great. So, a couple things. Number 1, she earned 4 experience with a nat 20. So that is 3 for the critical success, as well as +1 being a fast learner as in humanoid. So that brings up her total skill experience for sense to a total of 7, which is really, really good. Okay, so I think that with that 23 total and a crit success, I think she's going to find 2 really useful items. The first one is going to obviously be some kind of food ration. So I'm going to add a medium food ration. It takes up 1 item slot, but she has some food on her that she can actually use a couple times before it's actually consumed. In this case, I think she'll go ahead and consume a bit of it right away, just like immediately. And I think it'd be like, I don't know, maybe some like chips or some kind of snackage kind of thing, something like that she can actually take with her that won't expire so much. Maybe some trail mix, kind of that bar food, maybe some peanuts or whatnot, right? But yeah, so I think that would be number 1. I also think that behind the bar, she would have likely found some kind of like med kit or something, right? Like just in case somebody like cuts their hand, breaks a glass, that kind of thing. So I'm just going to add a regular stim pack to her inventory as well. And again, being on her own, I think it makes sense for her to have just a couple of extra tools to her just in case, right? Anything kind of goes on. But I think that's the most that she would get on that, especially with the food. You have multiple uses on it. So from there, I think her feeling confident, she's going to see if she can go upstairs and see if there's anything else that she might be able to find upstairs. So let's actually roll on the emulator to see, can she find anything that would be useful to her adventuring or anything like that may even help. I would say this actually, can she find anything that would point her to where is she right now? I think that would be a big thing that she'd look for upstairs. Perhaps there's some paperwork, some traveling, some newspapers, some maps even, anything like that. So let's do that. Let's see if that gets answered. Oops, we got a D20 there. So yeah, let's roll this one. Can she find anything? So 65 or below to help her out. So that looks cocked over there, but it looks like it's on the 40, so we're going to take that, so 44. So with that said, yes, she is actually able, but with a 44, that actually is going to be a bit of something fun. But being double numbers is going to actually do something for us, so I'm going to go ahead and double check that. Okay, so with that, a random event is going to occur. We'll roll for that in a minute. It is a D100 roll again. But with that said, let's look at first what is it that she finds. It is going to be something useful. So I think we should see, what the nature of that is going to be. So a mythic does have a bit of something for that, some kind of tables to be able to roll on. So I'm going to look at some of those, and then we'll go ahead and get back to rolling on it. Okay, so I think there's going to be something that is going to be kind of an object for her to find, and perhaps something that she can scavenge as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll on Mythic's objects table to kind of determine maybe what the nature of that object is. And I think, it's got to be something that is beneficial. So if we don't necessarily like this roll, we can kind of go from there, right? It's our game, right? So let's have fun, right? So let's actually search that up. With that looks like gotta tilt this, a 35 on the objects table. So that is going to be fancy. Interesting, a fancy object. So with that, let's look at the scavenging as well. So let's look at scavenging results. She's looking around. She's trying to see, what she might be able to find. Let's look at that. We've got a 4. So double zeros and a 4. Allies. So scavenging results related to fancy and allies. Fancy and allies. So I think what she may have found initially is perhaps some kind of form of clothing for sure with fancy. That's got to be right. Maybe some fancy boots, and perhaps I think it might even this is really fancy in her artwork, in Nightwave's artwork. A little meta here. She does have a chest plate. That it's not kind of traditional, right? It's very protective and so on. So I think she might have found that. Upstairs. It is fancy in nature. It does stand out a bit as well. So now she's got her coat. She's got that, and she might have found some boots that actually fit her. Maybe they're a little bit oversized as well. But as far as allies go, I think she would find something that would point her towards an actual another town that is actually on the map. So I think that actually makes sense to me, that perhaps this town was something that was abandoned some time ago, and maybe not too long ago, obviously, from what we've been able to find, but I think something where she's now able to kind of know, okay, hey, going in a certain direction, she should be able to find actual population that could help her out. With that said, we've got a random event that we've got to account for. So I think also with the allies, part, like having that town in there, I think that she would have found some information perhaps related to the Galactic Legion United. So these are, an intergalactic force that is aligned with different supers. Supers are, on the roster, and they're out there doing crime fighting. They're stopping criminal gangs and things like that. I think she would see some kind of reference to the Galactic Legion United that would point her to, okay, that other town may not just be allies, but there may also be some GLU there that perhaps could take her in, perhaps could help her out with these new powers that would make her something of a super herself, that maybe she can actually go towards. And I think she'd want to, but let's discover through this and roleplay, like if that actually makes sense for Nightwave to pursue. So let's go into the random event. So first thing is we've got to roll a D100 still. So let's get that going, and let's look at what we got. That is a 59 on the dare ball, and that is going to be move away from a thread. Move away from a thread. So that's interesting. So we've got a couple of threads that are open right now. So a couple of threads that perhaps that she can move away from. So how did she get the powers? Who is it that experimented on her? And why was Black Arrow there in the lab with her? So a couple of threads there. I think that the one that makes the most sense is for her to move away from why was Black Arrow there. Perhaps that's less of something that she would want to actually pursue. So I think that with that, perhaps there's something in the lab as well that's maybe going on right now that Nightwave's not aware of. We know we rolled earlier for new activity, meaning that they've likely have patrols pursuing her, and that she would feel like through her survival skills she likely needs to get on going and moving as fast as possible. But I think with this, why was Black Arrow there? That's become more of a thing that she kind of puts in her back pocket. She'll remember that, but I think it's not nearly as important as getting away, being safe, and trying to figure out more about what's going on here. So with that said, I think that's how we would move forward on that. Now, with that said, I do want to ask the emulator, the Oracle, are there any patrols that are coming into this town now? Perhaps this is one of the nearest towns, so they would likely try to pursue her if she's in this town, right? Because it would be the nearest kind of safe haven or safe place for her to drop into. So let's take a look at that and give it a roll to see if a patrol has come into town, or is, let's see if they've come into town. Oh wow, so that is 100, so that is an extreme no. So let's actually look at that just to be super clear. Okay, so with 100, that is an extreme no. So when an exceptional no, I should say. So essentially it's the opposite of the yes, or opposite of the yes intensified. So essentially, we said that, did a patrol come in? The opposite of that is no, a patrol didn't come in, but perhaps the exceptional side of that is perhaps there's someone there to help her, or that could help her, that is rolling into the town right now. I think that would make more sense, right? Perhaps there's a group that is coming in that she can kind of look at through the window and see if maybe they're going to be allies or not. So I would say that she's going to move a bit here. I'm going to move some things to try to put her at a better position. So put her inside of the actual tavern. She has a view out the window, and I think she hears a voice, "Look out the window." And it's this trusting voice that she's allowing more into her to compel her. And perhaps at the same time that she heard the voice, she kind of feels some kind of ping of psionic energy as well. Maybe with her psionic energy, it's kind of resonating in that she can feel down the hall, down the street, that someone or something is actually approaching. So with that said, I actually am going to roll to see the nature of what's coming, to help me kind of determine, okay, what might this be? Right, and with it being an abandoned town, it could be anything from, a creature looking for, a quick snack of something, to obviously not a patrol. We've determined that, but obviously it could be something very beneficial, and it should be with that exceptional. Yes, it should be something very beneficial to her. But let's go ahead and do a roll here to see, how that actually comes out. So. Okay, so first of all, we're going to roll for the descriptor of what this is. So that is a 77. So let's see what that would be. That is rough. So that's already starting out rough. And then let's see what kind of role this person or thing is. So let's roll that. And that is a 44. So with 44, that is going to be a rough judge. A rough judge. Huh. So a rough judge, that could be perhaps somebody who is or was maybe an officer or someone in the military, or maybe an ex version of that. That maybe has stumbled or bumbled upon this area, that but they are, again, with that exceptional yes earlier, it should be somebody who is perhaps willing to help. So let me think about this just a bit, and who that might be. So rough judge, I kind of have some idea for it, but I'm going to use Une, the tool, to kind of help determine out who else might this be, a little bit more about them, so that way I can kind of form who's actually approaching this town. So I'm going to roll for a motivation verb and a motivation noun. So let's see what comes up from there. Maybe we'll get a better picture of who's rolling up. So that is a 28 for the motivation verb. So aid, even better. And then aid, and then that is a 16. So aid, medicines. Okay, so rough judge, aid, and medicines. I think that this is another super that perhaps has some kind of power, some kind of light healing power, and they found this town as well, and they maybe escaped from a lab, or they are going through similar experience as Nightwave right now. And I think that might be interesting. I think that Nightwave is not alone anymore. And with the Thrawn speaking up and saying, hey, look out, right? I think that they're trying to tell them that this person is in the same kind of predicament, that Nightwave is not by herself anymore. Well, literally and figuratively in front of her by herself anymore. So with that said, I think that that's going to be who it is. It's going to be a super that's going to have light manipulation powers. We're going to roll a couple other things to kind of build up what kind of species they are real quick, and we'll kind of go from there. But yeah, let's do that. So the first thing is that we are going to roll for what kind of species they are. This is going to just require a D8, so let me get that out. I do like metal dice. I apologize if it has been loud, but I'm going to use nice, very sharp metal dice here. So let's get that one going. Where'd you go? 8. So an 8 is a reroll. 6. So 6 is going to be a chromid. So that's awesome. A chromid is one of our robotic species. They essentially have a source of energy within them on their head. So this is going to be a chromid. And then from there, we're going to look at voice. What do they sound like? And that's going to tell us a little bit about them. So this is going to be a D20 roll, voices and accents. So let's see what it comes out to. So this might be a good fun combination. Nat 20 is wise and soothing. You can't get better than this, folks. So with that said, as a chromid, I think we're going to have to make up a fun name. So I'm going to look up in Fantasy Name Generator. I'm sure some of you are familiar, but use that, and I'll probably find a nice robotic name that makes the most sense. Pretty soon here we'll have a fun tool for creating chromid names and other different species-based names that may make sense for the universe. I found a fun name, and not really fun, but I think it makes sense with the smooth or wise kind of voice, Willow. And being a chromid, they would have a short name, but I think that Nightwave now peers through the window after hearing, the Thrawn actually talk to her, and she sees this figure, and this figure, it looks like kind of a woman is in the distance, and she's kind of straggling, or like kind of barely able to walk forward, and I think Nightwave, her senses, her, like, she's not really thinking that this is going to be an enemy or anything like that. And then her being, she always wants to help. She wants to figure out how she can help out, but she's obviously extremely confused with, who she is, or rather who she is, where she is, right? So the first person that doesn't look like a robot or a scientist, I think that she might actually approach them, right? And I think the Thrawn kind of helping her out and pointing her towards this person, I think makes sense. So I'm going to say that Nightwave reaches out the window, and she kind of looks over and says, "Hey, you! Are you lost?" And perhaps back to her, she says, "Oh, hello. No, I'm not sure. Am I lost? I'm not sure how I got here." And Nightwave will kind of look back at her and say, let me come down. Let's talk." And she starts racing down and gets closer to her. So let me actually set that up. Now, stranger danger is normal, right? But I think that in this kind of experience, where you can clearly see that it looks like someone is by themselves, they're kind of in a clearing as well, and they look like they're stumbling around. I think that Nightwave is getting a sense, and she's feeling it, I think, with her psionic ability, that this person or this thing doesn't, mean harm. And so with that, I think that she would look like this as well. The chromid species is metallic and very crystalline in their body and their skin shape and so on. So I think that it would be kind of all crystalline, perhaps a robe, a tattered robe, and perhaps some of the same kind of clothes that Nightwave was wearing while they were in a tube. They were in the tube being experimented on and looked at by these scientists, and that maybe brings a sense of guard down. But Willow perhaps will reach out and say, did you come from a tube as well? And Nightwave would say, yes. I don't know how I got here. I don't know who brought me to that lab. And this Willow would reach out and say, I think that we should work together. I think that maybe we're better together. I don't know where to go from here. And I think Nightwave would hold up the object that she found, saying, like, pointing towards allies, and she would say, I think that we might have a town that maybe we can get to together, if you're willing. And Willow would look back at her and say, friend then. You are a friend. And Nightwave would say, yes, I'm a friend. And I think that's where we will leave it for this session. This has been really fun because we are bringing out some new things that we've been building out, like being able to create quick descriptors and understanding what might be the nature of things. So this is just tools for comic editors to on the fly just be able to make. So been fun to be able to test that out, and I also hope that for this episode, as we bring it all together and the editing process, that you do like, you know, the going back and forth to be able to build things on the fly. But this for me is fun because I was not expecting to find another ally here, or perhaps anybody who even is going through the same things as Nightwave. You know, and that's really the fun aspect of roleplay, isn't it, right? So just being able to be comfortable with the unexpected and seeing where we can go from here. So with that said, thank you so very much for listening, and we look forward to bringing to you the next episode soon. Hope you have a great day, night, wherever you are.